Now for part two of the lecture. And for this part of it, what I would like to do is give you a idea of really what is fair use and what do we mean by it, especially related to materials that we will use in the classroom, and then what are the four criteria associated with copyright and what, how we think about the concept of fair use. One thing that this slide is entitled Teachers Cry Fair Use. Again, I bring this to you because this is what happens a lot, where we are really kind of pushed into a corner as teachers because we want to do what's best for our students. And in order to do what is best for our students, we just try to use everything that we can. And sometimes we get caught up in providing those opportunities with our students, but then providing them in such a manner that we're using things that we shouldn't be using, or we're using too much of something, or we're making copies of something we shouldn't be making copies of. And so we just have to kind of think and put it into context so that we're making sure that yes, we are really working on creating an ethical environment for us and for our students. So when we think about fair use, what the federal law basically says is fair use is legal for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research. And when we use it for those things, we do not infringe upon copyright. So it's kind of nice because teaching there is front and center, right? So I think in that statement, it just sounds like, okay, it's fair use. Teaching's part of fair use. We're not breaking copyright. But what people forget to do is kind of keep reading and understanding that with fair use, we do have criteria that we have to think about. Okay, so again here I've listed some of the excuses that we typically hear from classrooms as to why we can use things rather than a well thought out reason for why I'm copying or why I'm getting that material. A lot of the times, again, and I am no different from anyone else. You guys, 30 years ago in the classroom, or just about 30 years ago, it was different. It was different because we didn't have the ease of digital access that we do today, but we were still in that era where starting to be able to get digital material, even print material and so forth. So, we said it benefits the kids, it's okay. We're not making any money on it, so it's okay. But I think in today's classroom, in where we are professionally and where we are ethically, I think it's really important to keep fair use in mind. So what I would like to do next is kind of cover the four criteria of fair use. These are mentioned very, very briefly in your article, but we will continue to elaborate on them, and hopefully I can explain them here for you to get a kind of a background on them as we kind of move forward with this. So the first criteria, oh, I should say as well too, I very rarely will say memorize this material. I'm going to say, you guys, one thing that I want you to leave 201 with is I want you to memorize these four criteria of fair use, okay? Because I want you to just automatically to be able to, when you question whether you're using a digital, a print, an audio, a video resource in your classroom, you're going through these 4 criteria quickly to think, can I do this? And why can I do this, or why can I not do this? And again, there you're modeling for your students in an appropriate and ethical way. So the first criteria, the purpose and the character of use. This one is pretty easy for us in education to meet, meaning check. This should be okay. The purpose and character of use usually refers to, is it a commercial purpose or is it an educational purpose? So a commercial purpose implies there's probably money involved, it's more company based, that kind of a thing. So you have to be a little bit more leery about that when that happens. The other piece of it is educational. So if it's an educational use, it's usually okay. So when you're using something in your classroom and you are connecting it to the curriculum, it's a learning objective, then it's an educational reason for using it, and you should be fine in using that resource in the manner that you want to. Number 2, this one is a little bit more harder to conceptually understand because it's pretty vague even when you read about it. But the best way that I can kind of maybe help you with this one, and that is the nature of the copyrighted work, is to think about it in terms of a continuum. At one side of the continuum, you have materials that are very, very fact-based, okay? They're very, very fact-based in that, no matter how you see them written, no matter how they're expressed, it's pretty well the same information all the time. I can use like a historical example where, we see facts on George Washington or something, when he was born, where he was born, when he was president, what were his accomplishments. Those are very straight and forward. When people talk about them, they usually talk about them in the same way. So there's not much change in them. On the other side of the continuum, this is more highly creative, okay? So we go from highly fact-based to highly creative. And for this is where, someone has put the efforts in that it's very, very difficult to replicate. We think of our artists, whether they're painting or whether they're musical artists, whether they're creating movies. These are kind of the works of art that I think about. And if it's highly creative and it's like, I can't really replicate that. I mean, I don't have the ability to sing that song or make that character or, produce that movie. It's a little bit tougher, okay? So on that continuum, if something is more highly creative, then you're probably going to be questioned about whether it is aligned with fair use or not. The more creative something is, the more it has the possibility of not being used in a classroom or for those other areas. So kind of think about that as you go through the materials. Number 3, we'll talk about the specifics about this in terms of the amount to be copied. But here again, what you have is, if you're going to use the work as a whole, then you are probably breaking fair use and copyright, okay? But if you legally use a portion of the material, then you are probably okay. So there again, if you're going to use the whole thing, be careful. You know, there's situations where you can, but that should raise a red flag for you. If you're going to take a portion of something in its entirety, you know, just a portion of it, then you're probably more likely to be following the guideline for fair use, okay? And there are you know, there are portions of, you know, there are certain parts of print material, music material, video material, and so forth that we can use, okay? And I'll help you understand those here as we keep moving with copyright. The fourth and last criteria is the effect upon the potential market value of the copyrighted work. And so again, here in education, this usually works for us because anything that we do in the classroom, we are not usually impacting the market value of something. However, there are instances where we really have to be careful, okay? I'm going to use more of a personal example for this, and I think you can then infer it to a classroom. But, and I'm not saying, but I'll use it in the context of, do you know someone who has downloaded music from their maybe iTunes account or whatever, and they've put 10 songs on a CD, burned it, and given it to you or someone else and said, here, you know, these are great songs, listen to them, you're going to love them, okay? Well, the problem with that is it does, even though it's free, right? The person that gave you the CD, they paid for it, but now they've given it to you free. Well, that impacts the market value of that material because now you aren't going to buy it on iTunes because you already have it, okay? So it's little things like that that we have to think about. And even in the classroom, does that happen, okay? Does that happen? But again, I don't think intentionally, usually in our context of the world of K-12 education, we're not maliciously trying to impact the value, the market value of, you know, of what we're doing. But again, we'll give some examples, and we'll talk about some examples of that in class to see how you what you think about it. Okay, so those are the 4 criteria of fair use. You just have one more very short video to watch, and that is I'm going to have you analyze an example to see what you think. Does it meet the 4 criteria? Does it just meet some of them, or does it not meet it at all? Okay, so access the 3rd video now.